Hi, good morning, everybody. This is Mark at the park. Today we're visiting the dive museum, and so we're going to head on in. This is right next to our dive store. So if you haven't had a chance to come here yet, you need to drop by. So let's take you inside. You can see there is an abundant amount of equipment here. But the cool part is not just looking at the equipment, there's history with every piece of equipment in here. This is a gentleman that runs the museum.
Hi Mark, how are you?
Doing great.
I'm John Council. This is the Avalon Diving History Exhibit, and we specialize in education about the history of diving. So we promote it and try to keep the legends and the equipment and everything like that alive and tangible for new divers, so they can learn a little bit about the background of what they're getting involved with today.
And not just new divers, John. You got some of us older guys that get a kick out of coming here. I got goosebumps in my arms every time I walk into this shop.
Well, that's because you appreciate this stuff, yeah. But it's fun.
So, John, you got a lot of gear in here, and I know all of this, most of it probably has some history behind it.
Yes.
Can you show us a piece of equipment that is one of your favorites? And I know you got lots of stuff in here.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, but what got me interested in diving history, when I started diving back in 1974, my reasons for getting in the water were up in the Seattle area in Puget Sound with my brothers and a few friends. Let's just go, pop a lingcod and get some Dungeness crab for barbecue this weekend, and that was really it. It wasn't until maybe about a decade later I started doing marine research work up in the Arctic, doing data collections for the EPA and NOAA, and through that process, oddly enough, we needed to have more opportunity to work in the water and stay longer, and we decided what we needed was a small submersible. So I was trained as a submersible pilot in the late 80s, and through that process I started working with most of the legends. And one of those legends was Dr. Andy Recknitzer, who, if you're not familiar with that name, try and look him up. The guy is unbelievable. He and Conrad Limbaugh, or Connie Limbaugh, are the guys who wrote the syllabus for dive instruction back in the early 50s, so pretty amazing stuff. Anyway, Andy became the science officer in charge of Project Necton, which was the Trieste, and they went down to 35,800 feet on January 23rd, 1960, with Don Walsh, naval lieutenant, as a pilot, and the owners, not the owner, but the manufacturer of the sub, the inventor of the sub, the Bathyscaphe Trieste. They took down Auguste Piccard as the son and Don Walsh, and they went down 35,800 feet, 7 miles. And so Andy was in charge of that, and Andy and I were sitting together in the submarine one day, and I said, hey, what was the cool piece of gear, when you were coming up that you just had to have? And he told me, oh, hands down, the Rolls Royce of dive gear back then was the Scott Hydropack. I'd never even heard of that. I go, what the hell is a Scott Hydropack? And so he started describing it to me. And I still didn't know that much about it, but I knew one thing: I had to have one. And that sort of started this thing, years and years ago. But here's a Scott Hydropack, created as a collaboration between the U.S. Navy and Scott Aviation Company, and well ahead of its time for that era. Everything prior to that were all these double hose regulators, and this company did all sorts of aerospace engineering, and so they designed a breathing system which was not unlike the breathing systems that they were building for pilots in war aircraft during World War II. They built a single hose regulator. It's got a snorkel on the top already built in, so you don't have, open breathe during the surface, so you don't have to deplete your tanks. Shut the snorkel down, go in. There's a balance tube underneath, so no matter what your orientation is, there's positive pressure on the diaphragm. So as soon as you inhale, it delivers air, way ahead of its time for that time. But also about $320. And so you could buy a mask and a regulator combination back then for about $39.95. So it was almost 10 times the cost. So the Navy didn't order nearly as many as they wanted. They went public with them in 1954. And again, pretty paltry sales, and boom. So anyway, the neat piece of gear. That's one of my favorite pieces in here because it ties back to Andy.
You got to come in and see John, all right? And he's just a plethora of information.
Thank you, brother.
And I love this guy. He's awesome. One day I saw his gear. It was over at the Tuna Club, and he had a bunch of gear laid out. And I'm looking at it going, wow, I have some of that stuff. And then once I started talking to him, I realized that he's got more gear then I have pennies. It's unbelievable amount of the stuff that he has. So get a chance after you do the dive or before you do the dive, come on in, visit John. And if he's not here at the shop, what are you doing, John?
Probably Marine Animal Rescue. We head up the Marine Animal Rescue program for Catalina Island. We're up to almost 1,200 rescues since 2013, which is surprising, but it's obviously a needed service here on the island. And so if I'm out, cutting line off a whale or picking up a sea lion and transporting it over because it's got, netting wrapped around it or what have you, but that's what we do.
Awesome. Thank you, John, for your time. Have a great day. Bye. All right, so we're heading out again. This is where the location is. It's right here. It's right next to our dive shop, which is right over here. Thanks, everybody. Mark out. Bye.